Let's talk about Duncan X Season 1. Yes, I'm back. I'm alive. I know I haven't been uploading for the better part of 8 months now, and that was just because life was busy, life was exciting, life was exhausting, and I just couldn't find the time to upload stuff. And then I knew I was going to watch Dunkin' Egg early, so I didn't want to make these videos analyzing the show. What could they do when I'm just disguising spoilers as my own educated guesses. And I know that there are people out there that do that because some stuff that I was seeing in the last couple of days was so exactly that. So exactly what was going on in the season that I'm like, you're a douchebag. Um, so here I am. We're gonna talk about the show, and as most of you, um, if you've been following me on this channel at least, will know, this story means so much to me. This story is very near and dear to me. It's my absolute favorite. These are my favorite stories set in the world of Ice and Fire. I think it's George R. R. Martin's best work when it comes to Ice and Fire. And here we are. I always wanted to see it on screen, and now I did. I watched the show 3 times, and right away, what I can say is that it took some time for me to really get into it, to really be sucked into the story. And I thought that was quite weird, but it all makes sense. I think I found the reason why that is. We're going to talk about it later. Let's talk about the elephant in the room first. I'm talking about a show before it comes out. Um, and I just want to clarify that these are really are my own thoughts. I'm not a show. I'm not paid to say anything. Um, if I did that, I shouldn't have gotten the screeners, because if you look at my House of the Dragon season 2 reviews, you will find that I was quite harsh. I was very harsh, and you couldn't pay me enough to fake my opinions on a show that or on novellas that mean so much to me. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I have been sitting in that chair before. I was right here talking into this camera right here, and it was for House of the Dragon season 2, and I talked about the first 4 episodes. I also got to see them early. I was quite positive, um, with the exception of Blood and Cheese being odd, and I still stand behind that. And then when you see, what happened afterwards, I was quite harsh. I'm always real. Without further ado, let's jump right into it and talk about the casting, just real quick, because, um, you know, what am I gonna say? Wow, great casting, of course. HBO has always nailed the casting for its shows. The actors they had, they were always perfect. They were always great, and I think that especially goes for Peter Claffey's Dunk in this show. He's just so incredibly good. He is Dunk. He is like Dunk. And I knew that they were gonna nail this casting because I've helped someone for the audition. So a buddy of mine auditioned for the role of Dunk, and I helped him. So I got to see the tapes, the stuff that they were focusing on when casting Dunk, and it was basically two fake scenes, because they didn't put in the names, but it was basically a conversation with Sir Arlen of Pennytree, and it was a scene with Tenzel, just reworked, so you don't have the names in there in case it gets leaked. So I knew that by focusing on this mentor and small folk perspective, that they did their homework basically, and it shows. Peter Claffey's perfect. Dexter Enzel's dunk, Dexter Enzel's egg is also very very good, which is quite hard, to find good child actors, but he is really really good, very very funny. My personal highlight, however, is Bertie Carvel's Baylor Breakspear. My God. I love every scene that he's in. He just oozes chivalry and wisdom, knowledge, and he's so perfect in the role. It's all delivered in such a lightheartedness that's perfect. I was glued to the screen whenever he was there. He was perfect in every single scene, and those are my highlights of the season, the scenes that he's in. Other highlights for me personally were, and that's why I look down there, gotta make sure I don't butcher the names, are Sean Thomas's Sir Raymond Fossaway and Daniel Ing's Sir Lionel the Laughing Storm Baratheon. Um, Very funny and quite odd. I think, especially Daniel Ing's Lionel Baratheon is gonna resonate very well with the fans because he's so goddamn funny. And he reminds me of Jeffrey Dean Morgan in such a freakish way, which is quite crazy. He's very different from the character that we all imagined. He's not just some big, tall, bulky guy. Um, he's quite witty, quite funny. He's a drunk, um, and it's fun whenever he's around. One tiny little disappointment was that Makar is not really Stannis coded in the show, and I think that was thinking or wishful. It was hope and cope for me that we get some version of Stannis from the books in the show, but we're not. But Sam Sproul is perfect for what they were going for. He's much more comedic, but he's not Stennis. Just wanted to mention that for some of you out there that we're hoping for. We're hoping for that. Not gonna happen. Not happening. So I want to focus on two main things today, which are adaptation and tone. And let's start with the tone. My God, this show is so incredibly different that it was hard for me to get into it, even though I'm such a hardcore fan, and even though I love the story so much. I've watched the show 3 times. And on my first watch, it took me 1.5 episodes to really get into it. And there's a number of reasons why. First one being, it's so on the nose different, and it tells you it's so different right from the get go. There's a scene very early on, and they're teasing the Game of Thrones intro, the music's playing da 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 da, and next thing you know, there's Dunk shitting, and it's a very like, I'm not making this up, by the way, this is exactly how it goes down. We see Dunk shitting right as the intro music starts. It's an odd start, but okay. This show can be quite edgy in the way it's telling you that it's so different and so, born in the wrong generation as. And it's a very comedic approach. And if you were going to do it, I think it fits with this story. But I gotta be honest, not every joke landed. And I'd say most of the jokes didn't land with me on my first watch. And comedy rarely ever works on the second or third watch, right? So it is goofy at times. There are jokes that are quite dumb, quite stupid. There's one moment where a character shares his trauma, and then they cut to another character laughing about it, which was very unfitting. Not going to reveal who these characters are because I'm not allowed to, but that was very, very goofy. And there are other moments that just feel forced, just doesn't resonate with me. But there are other jokes that are quite clever, so I think all in all, it evens itself out. But man, it can get quite nerve wracking where just why. Duncan Egg is very lighthearted and rarely dark, which fits the novellas, of course. But I didn't anticipate it being so comedic and so lighthearted, which is fine. By the time we get to these big moments that have to hit and have to be quite dark, it is dark and it works. But I guess I'm a sucker for, Westeros being very nitty, very gritty, a brutal world in which these two light-hearted characters are thrown into. So I expected the surroundings and the characters to be more harsh or more cruel. I think almost every character gets to be quite funny. Even Arion has a very funny scene, which it's just something that initially for me it was quite hard to get into. Something that worried a lot of people was the news that Ramin Djawadi was not gonna compose for the show, and I gotta be honest, I think it's all right. It's good. It's there's this one main theme that keeps playing with a fiddle and lute that is very good. Completely different again, trying to be different, aiming to be different. But I just think that you know the music in this show again is at its best when it is when it's more epic, more grand, and everything about it is very small. Again, that fits the story. So I know what they were going for. It's just personal taste. I like the fantasy music, the big, grand, epic themes. I wanted something like this for Dunk, but I guess it doesn't fit. When we get to those big, dramatic moments that they have to nail, and book readers will know which moments I mean, the music's perfect. So it evens itself out again, but yeah, I've had a rough time getting into it, like being pulled into it, and I really did by the time episode 2 came around. So let's jump right into the adaptation part of this video. Did they adapt the show properly? And I gotta say, yes, I think so. There is no crazy, outlandish changing going on. There are no White Walker dreams or elements that are just there to no hype elements, no nonsensical things, nothing that's disrespectful to the source material. I think all in all it's a fantastic adaptation. Actually, the dialogue is ripped straight from the book, from the short story, the first one. And it's very colorful, which I like. The sigil and everything. It's very vibrant. The tourney is great. Everything looks beautiful, and that's something I think they've nailed in their aim to be different. Was that, as we all know, it can get quite dark in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, and it doesn't in Duncan Egg. And surprisingly, when it is dark, they manage to have fantastic lighting, brilliant lighting. So yeah, the adaptation is mostly on point, and the stuff that is added is pretty good for the most part. I gotta say, I had a tough time with Sir Arlen of Pennytree. I think he was used for the exact type of humor that I'm not there for, and I think they've went a bit far in a few places when it comes to this comedic approach. But again, that is some pretty big nitpicking here, because the adaptation, it is unserious to criticize this adaptation in an age where, if you look at all the other adaptations that are going on at the minute, it's crazy how far how different it is from the source material. And this is very very close, and I think it just didn't land with me with the humor at times. Um, what I am quite pissed about is that one very famous line got cut. It's about knights and vows. That line was cut. And one last negative thing about the adaptation is that, we got a lot of clarification stuff that didn't really need clarification. I like when some things are left ambiguous, and for the interpretation of the viewers, we are, clever enough to figure stuff out. Especially, I think the Song of Ice and Fire community is, you know, famously very much online and very vocal, and we discuss stuff and we have a lot of fun debating stuff. So this season really clarifies things that didn't need to be there. But on the other hand, it also um, hints at stuff, at theories that we've been having for years and years and years. But enough with the nitpicking. What I can say positively about the adaptation is that Turney is incredible. That Turney is absolutely insane. It looks real because, for the most part, I imagine the stunts were just real, in a very safe environment, of course, but it was insane how the jousting looked, how the big fight that I'm not gonna be able to spoil, and I'm not allowed to spoil, but book readers will know. It's insane. It's so dirty, gritty, and brutal. So brutal. And it's way better than it was in the novella. And I think it's the grittiest, darkest fight that we got to see so far in the world of Ice and Fire. It's even dirtier and grittier than the fight between Brienne of Tarth and the Hound. So overall, Duncan X Season 1 is a pretty good adaptation of the novella, the first novella. I think they've done a beautiful job in the way they're portraying Westeros. The titles and lordship and what's a knight and what are vows, and we take quite a lot of time to really build it up and establish it. If I can say one thing about Duncan Egg Season 1 is that it is absolutely trying to be its own thing. It's not relying on other moments or piecing stuff together or doing cameos. And the stuff that they add is great too, for the most part. We have a lot of flashbacks with Dunk. We spend a lot of time with that, and I think that worked. For example, we have this very, very long sequence of Dunk and his I forgot the name. I think it was Wraith, um, which was his friend in Flea Bottom. We spent a lot of time with them in a certain episode, which I can't tell. Um, and it's perfect. It shows how it's like to live in Flea Bottom, and what it's like to be a peasant, and it shows Westeros through a different perspective, and it even gives us a glimpse at the Blackfire Rebellion, and there's a lot of care taken into it. It's just that some stuff that I keep referring to is very different tonally, but that's fine. Not every joke has to land, and it definitely evens itself out with the very small moments, the sitting by the bonfire talking about stuff, what it was like growing up, what it's like to be no one in a world um, that's so cruel. And but again, overall, it's a really really good season. It's not perfect. It has its flaws, but those are not as big as House of the Dragon's flaws or Game of Thrones' flaws later on. So I think it's really really good. And if you can look past the more you know the dumber jokes, then you're totally fine. And I think I'm probably complaining too much. Again, what's absolutely phenomenal is Baylor Breakspear, is the portrayal of knighthood, is the connection between Dunk and Egg. Beautiful. Whenever we get that, the show just excels. It's just beautiful. It's very very good. I enjoyed the relationship of Raymond Fossaway and Dunk as well. And I think you're going to have a lot of fun. If you're afraid that this is going to be another stinker, it's not. I'm here to tell you, it's absolutely not. So yes, I think you're going to have fun. I had fun. I was invested. I liked what they were doing for the most part. There's no crazy stuff in here that doesn't make sense. And yeah, I'll be interested to see how you guys will react to this season and to the episodes. And I'm going to be live every week after the episodes airs with the Grease Goblins, Becky Does Blog, and my buddy JC from The Advocate. That was my very spontaneous, no spoilers, no script review of season 1 of Dunk and Egg. I'm going to be very active on my social media channels, which are linked down in the description below, so definitely go check that out. And I'll be seeing you in the next one. It won't take 8 months this time. See you around. Take care, and see us later.